For those of you who don't remember my name, so my name is Brian. No need to call me Mr. NeSmith. You'll find in Silicon Valley, and I want to talk a little bit about that as we go into the future, is everything is very casual, very informal. So that California background. But before I go to California, I thought it worthwhile to establish my bona fides as far as being from this area. You know, it was interesting coming from Michigan to Alabama, and I don't know if it was so much Michigan to Alabama. I came from a high school of roughly around 5,000 people to a high school of about 400 people at the time, which is the size of West Point. I'm not quite sure how big West Point is right now, but a lot smaller than what I was used to. And it was a bit of a culture shock. Arriving there, I was a lot thinner, as most everybody would remember. I was roughly, I think, in my senior year of high school, about 130 pounds, but I did play football and did the math club. Those were my two favorite things in the world. I still probably arguably could say, other than my family, which ranks highest in the hierarchy of things, but it's things that I like that I'm doing here, it would have been math and it would have been football. But going back and talking about what's going on here, the first thing I'd ask, and I'm just going to do this by a raise of hands here, is how many, when you think about what you need to be successful in life, how many of you believe the biggest thing that you need to do is work really hard? How many think that's really the most important thing? And I'd say you'd be right. It's almost impossible to be successful without working hard. So if almost any other scenario, you either did something illegal or you were incredibly lucky. And so if you want to bet your future on just some random piece of luck that turned out in your favor, and the reality is you can't avoid working hard. My typical day, just to give you a sense, and this has pretty much been true since I got out of college, is I would get up between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. I would be to work by 6 or 6:30, and I would normally work till 6 in the evening. I had a hard stop at 6 p.m. where I would come home so I could spend time with my family. After the kids would go to bed, I would usually start reading and doing work again until about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So for me, and that was 5, and then sometimes a little bit on the weekend, days a week. There is nothing. There is no magic answer that you're going to be successful if you're not willing to work hard. I can't highlight it and emphasize it enough. But it's that for those that are of a math background, it's what's called a necessary criteria, but it's not sufficient. It's not everything that you need. Simply willing to work hard isn't going to make you successful. I know a lot of people that work incredible hours. They work really hard, but they work without thought. So work, when you apply it, is most valuable when you figure out what you're trying to do and what you're focused on. And so you've got to actually not simply just get head down. It's like, well, if I just work hard, I just get down there and I grind it and I just do it all the time, and then things are going to take care of me and it's going to come my way. And the answer is it's absolutely not, unless you're lucky. And there are people that get lucky. You'll find examples of people that either don't work hard or work hard without really thinking about it, and things just kind of fall in their lap and they become successful. So working hard is important, but working hard to an end, to a defined reason that you're trying to do something. If I could leave you with a couple things, is probably those two things in combination. That willingness to work hard, but also that willingness to work hard to a defined end. And what I mean by that, and for each of you, it has to be what's relevant for you. For some of you, it's going to be about, getting a family, raising a family, building a home. For some people, it's going to be some type of career. For some people, it's going to be some involvement in the community. But you have to define out, and people will tell you it's finding your passion or finding your desire in life. I would highlight it's something a little more basic than that. That basically, you have to figure out what you want to do. This is a little bit of an open-ended question, not one that I'm going to ask you to shout out an answer, but what is, for all of you, what is your most limited resource? Just stop back and think about it. Is it money? I bet you that's most people's answer. It's money. I don't have the money. Opportunity? Do you have just raise your hand? Go for it. If you have a question. Yes? Time? That actually is the exactly right answer. What's your name? Daniel? And what school? Fairview. All right. Give one for Daniel from Fairview, because that's a great answer. It actually is the thing that you're limited with, is that you're going to grow up and eventually you're going to die. Right? You have a certain amount of time on this earth to do something. Now, many of you as high schoolers don't think about that sort of thing. As you get a little bit older, it becomes a little bit more immediate for you, and you start realizing that time is a limited resource. That's the one thing you can't ever get back. Yesterday is gone. It's not there. So when you start thinking about what you want to do with your life, and you have to start thinking about it in the context that I only have so much time. And I don't say this to create a sense of panic on your part. It's more that to realize that I have this limited amount of resource, and it's a really precious thing, this time that I have, and what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with it? And you may not know. That's a really exciting, fun thing about being a senior right now. You may not know. You may not even be really clear. The point is you're at a time where you're going to discover that. You're going to want to discover that. So in a lot of cases, what you want to be doing at this stage is not saying, oh, I have to know exactly what my career is going to be. I have to know exactly what I'm going to end up doing. You don't have to have that answer. What you have to have is a willingness to say, I'm going to explore to discover what I want to do, what I'm interested in, what's relevant, what can I earn a living at doing, how much do I want to balance different things. But the point being is that because you have a limited amount of time, you have to think about it in that context, that time, that limit that you've got as a person. Because time is such a limited thing, you have to decide where you're going to invest it. Between your recreational habits, your family, your church, your work, your friends, and there are a lot of people that try to emphasize to you that you can have it all. The answer is no, you can't. Again, that time is a limited resource, and you have to decide what matters and what you care about in that picture. So one of the big things that people do is you try to basically create habits for yourself. So there's a book, it's actually been popularized in the last couple of years, called The Power of Habit. I'm going to very much recommend that all of you get a hold of this and read it. Because I think a lot of success in life will be built upon creating really good habits as a person. There's some really interesting people. I'm going to highlight two. One very relevant for this crowd here, they'll know very well, and another one that is very relevant for Silicon Valley. So the one here is the coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nick Saban. So Nick he is the most rigorous from the standpoint of managing time. And one of the things that he's highlighted is that I don't want to think about what I eat for lunch every day. I got a busy schedule and it's laid out. He eats the same thing at lunch every day of the week. Makes him boring. But what he's realized is the time that I would normally spend thinking about, well, where should I go get something? I've got a secretary so I can send them to go get it. But I still got to think about it. She's going to ask me my order and it's going to arrive and it may be a little bit different. He literally eats the same thing. A piece of iceberg lettuce with a little bit of dressing and a little bit of chicken that goes on it. And that's the same thing he eats every day. So if you're hanging out with Nick at lunch, that's what you're going to get for lunch. There isn't going to be a choice. He's made a conscious choice in the time of his day that I'm not going to spend time thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch. Kind of interesting that pans out that way, that it's something that simple. And that's a habit that he's created. Therefore, he knows every day when he puts things together, and he's done this across his entire football program. Whereas in his entire football program, he has a very regimented structure and schedule so that basically he doesn't waste time thinking about what he has to do. He knows what he has to do. I'm going to give you a separate example. And it became a signature for this individual. I think most of you have heard of Steve Jobs, so the inventor of Apple. Steve wore kind of a plain pair of pants and a turtleneck sweater, black. Believe it or not, he wore it every day. And he wore it every day because basically what he said is, I don't want to think about what I'm going to put on when I get up in the morning. When I get up in the morning, I'm willing to bet if you went to his closet there were 5 turtlenecks there, there were 5 sets of khaki pants, and he had a belt, and he probably had the same 2 pairs of shoes. So when he got up in the morning, he didn't think about what he had to get dressed or what he had to wear. And there's 2 things that come out of that. It's one is you're creating a habit, and the second is you're being conscious about where you're spending your time. If I point nothing else out to you and you don't get anything out of here, is to recognize that time is a really limited resource. And then secondly, to recognize that the habits that you create now are going to carry you for the rest of your life, good and bad. You know, how you study, how you work, how you engage with your family, what you do, those sort of things. And figuring that out and being conscious about that is a very powerful thing. So for me, it got to be, I got up early to get to work. And I created that regimen where I went into work, I did it every day, and then I would come home, and I'd spend time with my family, and I made a conscious decision that my life was going to be built around mainly work, and then I would go home and engage with my family, and then everything else really took a second, really took the backstage in everything that I was doing. So I had lots of other things. You have to decide what matters to you, and realize that every one of those decisions you make, whether you do that consciously or unconsciously, you're going to live that result, because you've only got a certain amount of time. So I think, that's probably the biggest thing, is recognizing that time, recognizing those good habits. I'll leave you with one other book. I discovered this book early on, and I say this not that you have to be, really get involved in this book, but it's a book called Getting Things Done. And it's a book about how to organize yourself. And if you do that, I don't care what kind of job you have. I don't care if you're managing your family, if you're managing a church social event, if you're working with in your job, if your job is doing construction or your job is running an office, it doesn't matter. None of those sorts of things. As you get older and as your life gets more complicated, as you have a family and as you have a spouse, and as you grow up, you get deluged with things that come your way. You have to create systems for managing that. And it's critical for you as a student. So as a person as you grow up. And if you don't, it will manage you. So that power of habit, recognizing that time, and then creating a system by which you're going to manage what you spend your time doing. Those are big things you can get out of what you do. Those things work for me, and frankly, I would say in ways I didn't recognize at the time, but now with the benefit of hindsight, had a measurable effect on my ability to be successful.